Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho.
Great! Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine. Great! Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri. Great! Our states are great. Everyone in its time has to come to the plate to become a great, great state. We don't exaggerate. 5-0 to date. Just a matter of time, just a matter of fate to become a great, great state. We don't exaggerate. Our great, great state.
Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico.
Great!
New York, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon.
Great! Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah. Great! Vermont, Virginia, Washington, West Virginia, Wisconsin, Wyoming. Great! Our states are great. Everyone in his time has to come to the plate to become a great, great state. We don't exaggerate. 5-0 to date. Just a matter of time, just a matter of fate to become a great, great state. And now we celebrate our great, great states.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's give one more round of applause to our choirs. I know they've been working very, very hard on getting ready for this program today. Before we move on to our next act, I have the honor and privilege of introducing our Veterans Day speaker, Mr. Joe Hastings. Mr. Hastings, up yet, absolutely, round of applause for Mr. Hastings. Mr. Hastings served as a sergeant in the U.S. Army, and currently he serves in the Texas State Guard. He's a founding member of their PT Men's Club. Mr. Hastings recently spent 2 weeks at the start of the school year helping with the recovery effort following Hurricane Harvey. We are honored to work side by side with Mr. Hastings. He is definitely our PT hero. Ladies and gentlemen, your Veterans Day speaker, Mr. Joe Hastings.
Good afternoon, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen in the back. I want to thank you all for allowing me this opportunity to be here. You all know me as Mr. Hastings, but today I have the distinct honor of speaking to you as Sergeant Hastings, and that's fantastic. I want to add one thing that Mr. Rodriguez started with, what a veteran is. A veteran, just to be clear, is any male or female who serves in the armed forces, being the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, or Coast Guard, for any amount of time, and then is honorably discharged. So that is what a veteran is. Okay, so I'm going to share a few things, and I made notes because I think I have a lot to share, and I want to make certain I get it right. Okay, so I was asked when I came to speak today, what does a veteran mean to me? And to many people, a veteran can mean many different things. But I wanted to share what it meant to me and how I reflect upon being a veteran. And to me, it is a time of distinction to recognize and acknowledge our men and women who have served proudly in our armed forces. It is a time of reflection to appreciate our nation's values and its rich history it was built upon. It is a time of remembrance for those who have served graciously, anonymously, at least to me, and have made the ultimate sacrifice. What does it mean to be a veteran, boys and girls? It's simple. It's duty, honor, country. Think about that for a moment. Duty, honor, country. Those are the things that resonate through me as a veteran. And it includes the willingness of any individual, ladies and gentlemen in the back, their willingness to serve, give their time, and make their sacrifices. Being a veteran is about pride, integrity, and sacrifice. It is about loyalty, respect, and sometimes humility. I believe being a veteran is a humbly honoring and remembering, I believe being a veteran is about humbly honoring and remembering those who have come before us, both living and deceased, as well as showing respect and honor to those who will follow us in the service of our great nation. I am honored to have the opportunity to have served in our country, to be a member of our armed forces, to be one of the approximately 20.5 million men and women who have served and call themselves veterans, who have served unselfishly and provided and protected the rights and freedoms that we all enjoy and expect today. As we reflect on this day of remembrance and observance, I would like to thank and salute each member of our armed forces for their service, their sacrifice, and for their love of the country. What does it mean to be a veteran to me? It means that I'm a proud American and that I have served my country with duty, pride, and honor. I only had 3 minutes to speak today, so I'd like to thank you all for your time, and may God bless this great nation.
Let's one more time, Mr. Hastings, everybody. So at the beginning of the school year, Mrs. Hoyle approached me and said, Mr. Rodriguez, we're doing the Veterans Day program. Would your students be willing to do something from the hit musical Hamilton? And I laughed inside because I just came back from New York and I saw Hamilton and I was completely blown away by it and by what that musical stands for our country. It has revitalized an interest in American history, and it teaches everyday people the importance of not only service to your country, but also about these important men and women who died for our country, known as our founding fathers. Today, my theater students, if you guys want to start getting ready, my theater students will be performing a song from the Tony Award-winning musical Hamilton, an American musical. Specifically, they'll be performing a scene featuring George Washington and a man named Marquis de Lafayette. Marquis de Lafayette was a Frenchman. You'd be wondering, Mr. Rodriguez, it's Veterans Day, why do we have a Frenchman in this scene? Well, Marquis de Lafayette and many others who were immigrants fought side by side with our Americans in the Revolutionary War. And George Washington was their leader. In fact, that leadership led George Washington to be our first and most popular president in American history. It is because of his leadership and the leadership of Marquis de Lafayette and the other men who fought in the Revolution that we have our country that we have today. So these students have had a whirlwind of rehearsals and they are ready to perform for you. And what I will say is this, this musical has probably one of the most difficult amounts of words in it. In fact, at the very beginning you'll hear our great Charlie Farrell will be speaking so fast you may not even understand. In fact, there's probably over, maybe 100 words in about 6 seconds. 150 words in 6 seconds. So you will hear Charlie Farrell go as fast as he can to get those words out. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, my theater students performing Guns and Ships from the hit Broadway musical Hamilton.
How does a ragtag volunteer army in need of a shower sing how to defeat a global superpower? How do we emerge victorious from the quagmire, leave the battlefield waving Betsy Ross's flag high?
Yep, turns out we have a secret weapon, an immigrant. You know and love who's unafraid to step in. He's constantly confusing, confounding the British henchmen. Everybody give it up for America's favorite fighting Frenchman!
Lafayette!
Take this horse, better reach, bigger bite, cause better blood stains.
Lafayette!
We're never gonna stop until I make a drop, burn them up, scatter the remains.
Lafayette!
Watch me engage, you never escape, I'm enraged and I'm out.
Lafayette!
Other friends, small funds.
Lafayette!
Come back, full guns.
And ships, and so the valiant ships.
We rendezvous with Rochambeau, consolidate their gifts.
We can end this war in Yorktown, cut them off at sea, but for this to succeed, there's someone else we need.
I know.
Paramount says your nose is jewel and treasure is your new to flip Benjamin.
Hamilton. You're gonna have to use eventually. Wasn't to eventually.
Hamilton.
Own houses learn to match my practical, tactical brilliance.
Hamilton.
Go fight for land back.
Hamilton.
Your right hand man back. Get your right hand man back. You know you gotta get your right hand man back. You gotta move dot and Lennon and sooner the better. Get your right hand man back.
Alexander Hamilton, our soldiers, field for you. If you join us right now, together we can turn the tide. Oh, Alexander Hamilton, our soldiers, field for you. If we manage to get this right, they'll surrender by early light. Oh, the world will never be the same. Alexander.
Okay, so since this is a celebration, not only our veterans, but a presentation of our arts, we can't forget we had orchestra, we had our choirs, we had theater, and we can't forget our band. So playing tech, we have our band director, Mr. Michael Dixon. Don't worry. Get it right next time. So this concludes the Pecan Trail Intermediate first annual Veterans Day presentation. We'd like to thank all of our guests, especially our veterans who came in support. We thank you once again from the bottom of our heart for your service to our country, and again, Mr. Hastings for his service, and for being an awesome teacher here at Pecan Trail. So on behalf of the administration here at Pecan Trail, Fine Arts team here at Pecan Trail, we thank you once again, and we'll wait for teachers to properly dismiss students. So students, please be seated until your teachers dismiss you class by class.
Don't move. You're going back to 6th, and then we'll send you to 7th. Your teacher will dismiss you. So don't move. Respect. Anytime. guys. Reach over. Reach over. Reach over. Reach over. Come on. Reach over. Get up. Watch out for that. Go forward again. Got it. Hey, Bars guys, listen. Bars guys, listen. Bars guys, when this is over, we're not going to get dismissed. We're going to go back to class, get our stuff, and go, okay? Going around. Watch out for this. Did you find your backpack? Make sure they don't touch it. Come on, guys. Sit down right here. Sit down right here. Sit down. Don't touch any of this,
Just a little bit so that everybody can fit. Don't like cram your neighbors, but just scoot up a little bit so that we have room for everybody. Okay, oh, right there's one, right there's one. Just stay on this line. Okay, fifth grade, one more thing. If you could please get quiet. If you could please get quiet and listen. If you could please not sit on your knees because the person behind you cannot see. So please sit on your pockets crisscross. Thank you.
Good afternoon, fifth grade, parents, PT faculty, staff, and most importantly, our veterans. Welcome to the 2017 Pecan Trail Intermediate School Veterans Day program. My name is Roy Rodriguez, and I serve Pecan Trail Intermediate as their theater teacher, and I'm so honored to be hosting today's event. Before we get underway, I'd like to begin by just sharing with you guys all the amazing artwork that Mr. Cameron Sands' art class has created. He told me this afternoon that they started by painting a flag in the background, and they made collages by cutting out different colors of pieces of paper and putting it in front of their flag, and they made their own unique pieces of art. So I want to take a moment just so that you guys can all enjoy the pieces of art that Mr. Sands' art classes created for our event today. Today's event not only is about our veterans, but we are saluting our veterans through our arts programs here at Pecan Trail. Every art program here at PT is being represented, orchestra, choir, band, theater, and art. So we are so glad that you guys are here today. And before we get started, I want to talk about the importance of Veterans Day. Veterans Day is actually tomorrow, by the way. And a veteran is defined as a person who served in the armed forces. In fact, millions of Americans call themselves veterans today. That number today, there are 20.5 million veterans in the United States today. Now, I want you to think about that number for a minute, 20.5 million people. Think about New York City. New York City has about 8.7 million people 8.6 million people in New York City alone. Okay, take New York City and add another New York City to that. And then take 2 of Houston, all the people in the city of Houston. 2 times Houston, 2 times New York City. That's how many veterans we have in the United States. That is a lot of veterans, 20.5 million veterans. And so these veterans not only are those that have fought during wartime, they're those that fought during peacetime. In fact, what's really most important about these veterans is they made the choice to defend our country, to protect our freedoms, our rights, our country, and most importantly, our United States Constitution. So these men and women, some of them have even made the ultimate sacrifice and died for their country and what we as Americans firmly believe in today. And so today's presentation is a salute and an honor to those men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice for their country and those who are still alive who have served in our armed forces today. But before we begin, I'd like to recognize any veterans. If we have any veterans in the room, if you could please rise for us. My veterans, if you could stay up for just 1 minute. 1 minute, if I can have every PT 5th grader, we're going to say a big thank you. So we're going to say thank you to our veterans. I'm going to count to 3 and we're going to say it all together. One big PT thank you to our veterans. In 3, 2, 1. Thank you! Thank you all so very, very much for your service. Now, Owls, I want to give you all a challenge. You know, a couple years ago, I was in an airport and I saw a serviceman in his uniform. And I made the point to go up to him and say, thank you so much for your service. And I think it's a really important thing for us to do. You know, there's a lot of military personnel, a lot of veterans today. And I think it's such a great honor for what they do. And I think it'd be a great thing for us to recognize and support. And I think one way we can do that is to thank our men and women who have served or who are serving in our armed forces by just a simple thank you for their service. So anytime you see one of those men and women in uniform, give them a nice thank you. Be a good owl. Alrighty, so before we get started today, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Palmer, our music teacher, and she's going to tell you about some etiquette with the National Anthem, and she's also going to introduce the National Anthem played by our famous Pecan Trail Orchestra.
Good afternoon, fifth grade. As you know, I'll wait. Thank you. As you know, the National Anthem is played at a lot of different times. It's played before football games, it's played before any athletic event. And when we play it, when it's played by our orchestra today, I would like you to, when you stand, put your hand over your heart and remember. Because when we play this anthem, we're honoring our country, we're honoring the people who have served and who are serving in our military. And so you need to be respectful. So when you stand, place your hand over your heart and be silent as we listen to our national anthem. Please stand now as our national anthem is played by the PT Orchestra.
want to once again thank Ms. Campbell and the Petite Orchestra for their fabulous playing today and squishing in a very small space. While Ms. Palmer's class is coming in, I want to take the time to just take a quick moment to reflect. You know, we just heard our national anthem. We just talked about what a veteran is, and we talked about how some of them have made that ultimate sacrifice. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to take a quick moment together while we're all sitting down, while we're all quiet, take a quick moment so we can have a moment of silence for those men and women who have died defending and fighting for our country. And I want to take that moment right now, just a couple minutes, to reflect on those men and women who have died for our country. Thank you all. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce again Mrs. Palmer and the Pecan Trail Intermediate Choir and Music classes. They'll be singing 3 songs, which I have right here. They'll be singing, where do I have it right here? There it is. We'll be singing there we go. Yes, America the Beautiful, Your Grand Old Flag, and Our 50 States Are Great.
Oh, beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriot dreams that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. You're a grand old flag, you're a high-flying flag, and forever in peace may you wave. You're the emblem of the land I love, the home of the free and the brave. Every heart beats true 'neath the red, white, and blue, where there's never a boast or fret. But should all acquaintance be forgot, keep your eye on the grand old flag. 50 stars in a field of blue, marching down the avenue. One by one we hold our banner high up in the sky. There's 13 stripes of red and white, you'll never see a finer sight. Even if you live to be 142. Woo! Proud to be an American, father, mother, daughter, son. your feet, literally beneath the red light over somewhere that's not your own words forever. So wait till we are wrapped in your own that red old flag. Our states are great. Everyone in his time had to come to the plate to become a great, great state. We don't exaggerate. 5-0 to date. Just a matter of time, just a matter of fate to become a great, great state. And now we celebrate our great, great states.
Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado.
Great!
Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho,
Great!
Indiana, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Illinois, Maine.
Great!
Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri.
Great! Our states are great. Everyone in his time had to come to the plate to become a great, great state. We don't exaggerate. 5-0 to date. Just a matter of time, just a matter of fate to become a great, great state. And now we celebrate our great, great states.
Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico.
Great!
New York, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon.
Great!
Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah.
Great!
Vermont, Virginia, Washington, West Virginia, Wisconsin, Wyoming.
Great! Our states are great. Everyone in his time had to come to the plate to become a great, great state. We don't exaggerate. 5-0 to date. Just a matter of time, just a matter of fate to become a great, great state. And now we celebrate our great, great states.
I once again want to thank our choir and our music classes for their Owlsome performance. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to tell you that it's very hard right now. We have some sound issues going on, so it's very hard to hear the speakers. So for our music and theater classes, they're doing their best, and I want to applaud them for that because it's a really hard thing to do when your sound's a little low. So applaud one more time for our music and choir classes. So, ladies and gentlemen, 5th grade students, I have the honor of introducing our Veterans Day speaker today. You all know him, you all love him, Mr. Hastings. Yes, Mr. Hastings. Mr. Joe Hastings served as a sergeant in the U.S. Army. Currently, he serves in the Texas State Guard. He is also, a really important fact to know, he is also a founding member of the Pecan Men's Club, so very important thing to know. Mr. Hastings spent 2 weeks at the start of the year helping with the recovery effort after Hurricane Harvey. We missed him very much at the beginning of the year, and his students can attest to that. Yes. And we are, as a Pecan Trail staff, as a Pecan Trail family, we are honored not only to teach side by side with him, but to know him. He's a wonderful person, he's a wonderful teacher, and ladies and gentlemen, I am once again honored to introduce to you our Veterans Day speaker, Mr. Joe Hastings.
And I'm here to share what an honor it is to be here. Distinguished guests, thank you for showing up this afternoon. While I was up here, or between the shows, I started to think a little bit about the two professions, teaching and the military, the similarities between them. Both are honorable professions and greatly received. Second, both require a great amount of commitment and dedication and sacrifice. And then finally, if you speak to anybody who's ever served in either one, you realize they don't go into it for the money. So today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what it means to me to be a veteran. And when I was first asked to do this, I started to think a little bit about myself personally, and I realized that the experience is different for everybody who has served. Depending on their experience and their background, it may be different. And so what I tried to do is I tried to put together from my perspective, but in trying to generalize what it is to be a veteran. And before I do, though, I wanted to add a little bit more to what Mr. Rodriguez had mentioned about what it is to be a veteran. Any male or female who serves in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, or Coast Guard for any amount of time and has been honorably discharged is considered a veteran. You do not need to serve in a war or overseas. You just need to serve. So when I started to think about what does it mean to be a veteran, I started to write a few things down. And I, believe it or not, have this memorized. But I realized that as I came into this room earlier and started to think about it, my mind went blank. And even as I read this in the previous group, I realized there's a lot of it that just seems to float away as I stand in front of a bunch of distinguished folks like yourself. So I wrote these notes out, typed them out, so that I have them available so that I wouldn't misspeak or say something that I didn't actually believe or find true. So what does it mean to me to be a veteran? Well, I wrote down 3 quick bullets. And the first is, to me, it's a time of distinction for recognition and acknowledgement of our men and women who serve proudly in our armed forces. The second is, it's a time of reflection, a time to show your appreciation to our nation's values and the rich history they were built upon. The third is a time of remembrance. Unlike Memorial Day, we did to recognize our veterans who are, of course, living, but also during Veteran Day, we remember those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. So we're looking to honor and remember those who have served graciously, anonymously, and have made the ultimate sacrifice. Being a veteran, there's 3 things that stand out. 3 qualities, 3 characters, 3 traits that any veteran can attribute and recognize. And that is, being a veteran is about honor, duty, country, and your willingness to serve. It starts there with serving. Those are 3 big words, 3 valued words, 3 important words. But they're 3 words that any service member or servicewoman has lived by. Honor, duty, country. Being a veteran is also about pride, integrity, and sacrifice. Every service member has experienced it. It's about loyalty, respect, and sometimes humility. I believe every veteran is about humbly honoring and remembering the sacrifices of those who have come before us, both living and deceased, as well as showing respect and honor to those who follow us in the service of our great nation. I am honored to have had the opportunity to serve my country, to be one of the 20.5 million men and women who have served unselfishly and protected the rights and freedoms of this great country of ours. As we reflect on this day of observation and remembrance, I would like to thank and salute each member of our armed forces for their service, their sacrifice, and their love of country. What does it mean to be a veteran? It means that I am proud to be American and have served my country with duty and honor. I'd like to thank all of you for this opportunity and the opportunity to speak before you about something that I value greatly. Again, I'd like to recognize and thank our guests for being here today, and I thank you once again. Mr. Rodriguez.
I don't know how anything can follow Mr. Hastings. Fifth graders know especially. Some of you have even had Mr. Hastings in the third grade, and our fifth graders know for a fact it's a hard act to follow. Mr. Hastings is an amazing person, and we are so thankful not only for his service, but for speaking with us today. So one more time for Mr. Hastings, or Sergeant Hastings, everybody. So fifth graders beware, Sergeant Hastings, not Drill Sergeant Hastings, but working on that part. Okay, so Mr. Hastings touched on all of the importance of being a veteran, and I kind of want to give you a little bit of a history lesson next. So when Mrs. Hoyle asked me what we could do, she suggested we do something from the Broadway musical Hamilton. I initially thought, well, what does that mean for Veterans Day? But what I love about Hamilton, you guys can start setting up here. My fifth graders, or my fifth and sixth graders, can start setting up for their performance. What I love about Hamilton, an American musical, is it reinvigorated an Americans, the history of our great country. The musical looks at the founding fathers, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and especially Alexander Hamilton, America's first Treasury Secretary. But little known fact, Alexander Hamilton was a veteran. Alexander Hamilton fought side by side with George Washington, our first president, in the Revolutionary War against the British. And so today, my students are going to recreate something I saw in a musical in New York City about a year ago. They're going to recreate the song that some of you know and love, called Guns and Ships. Now, in Guns and Ships, it features not only Aaron Burr, played by Satya and Tatum. They're going to be playing Aaron Burr, who we know from history ended up shooting and killing Alexander Hamilton in a duel. We have three students here. We have David, and we have Trey, and we have Angelica, who will all be playing the role of Marquis de Lafayette. Marquis de Lafayette was a Frenchman who fought side by side with the Americans in the Revolution. The French were very, very important to the Americans during the Revolutionary War. In fact, if you go to Washington, D.C., right across from the White House, you could throw a rock at it if you were looking at the White House. You will see a statue of Marquis de Lafayette. He was a very important figure in American history. And then you will also see our great Renee Berger, who will be portraying our founding father, our first president of the United States, George Washington. And so, little known fact that George Washington and Alexander Hamilton are very close friends. And Alexander Hamilton served under Washington, and Washington and Hamilton had a very special relationship and bond. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, my theater students will now be presenting to you Guns and Ships from the Tony Award-winning musical, Hamilton, an American Musical.
How does a ragtag volunteer army in need of a shower somehow defeat a global superpower? How do we emerge victorious from the quagmire? Leave the battlefield waving Betsy Ross's flag high.
Yo, turns out we have a secret weapon, an immigrant. You know and love who's unafraid to step in. He's constantly confusing, confounding the British henchmen. Everybody give it up for America's favorite fighting Frenchman! Lafayette!
I'm taking this whole slow race, moving records, trying blood stains. Lafayette! I'm never gonna stop till man drop, never scatter the remains up. Lafayette! Watch me engage him, escape him, and raging him out. Lafayette! I gotta find some more fun. Lafayette! Come back with more guns.
And ships, and so the balance shifts. We rendezvous with Rochambeau, consolidate their gifts. We can end this war in Yorktown, cut them off at sea, but for us to succeed, there's someone else we need, I know.
Hamilton.
So he knows what to do, trench to do for him, do it French, I mean.
Hamilton.
So you're gonna have to use him eventually. What's gonna do in the bench, I mean?
Hamilton.
You won't have to wear Zealand so much as my practical tactical brilliant.
Hamilton.
You wanna fight for your left back.
Hamilton.
And a right hand man back.
Hamilton.
Man back.
Hamilton.
Your right hand man back. I've forgotten that, but assume you're better. It's your right hand man back. Alexander Hamilton. Troops are waiting the field for you. If you join us right now, together we can turn the tide. Oh, Alexander Hamilton. I have soldiers that will yield for you. If we manage to get things right, they'll surrender by early light. Oh, the world will never be the same. Alexander.
Thank you guys so much. one of the most famous lyrics in Hamilton. In fact, one of the way that this musical ends is with a song called "Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Tells Our Story." In fact, the musical emphasizes this numerous times. In fact, Alexander Hamilton often asks himself that question, who will tell my story? That's what I think is really important about Veterans Day, that we remember our servicemen and women who came before us, who died fighting for those freedoms. And before we end today, we want to play a little bit of a song that was first started in the military as a way to let soldiers know it was sundown. It's a song that you know called Taps. Nowadays, Taps is played at military funerals for those servicemen and women who died with honor. It's oftentimes heard at Arlington National Cemetery. And so, ladies and gentlemen, our band director, Mr. Michael Dixon, will be playing for you Taps in remembrance of those men and women who died for our country. So, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our Pecan Trail Intermediate School first annual Veterans Day program. Fifth graders, if you could please stay seated. Do not move. Don't talk. It's going to be very helpful for our teachers to get you out. They're going to dismiss you by class. So if you could remain quiet, fifth graders. If you could wait for your teachers to signal you out. We'd once again like to thank all of the veterans who joined us today. All of our administration, our teachers, our staff, and especially the parents who watch your kids. You can view this ceremony on YouTube. We've shared a link, and you can see this again at home. It's been live streamed on the web, and you can watch it at home on YouTube. We'll share that out with you if you haven't already received it. Thank you all so much, students. Wait for your teachers, and you're dismissed.
People are watching it. Look. Is this even real? People are watching it. Yeah, he sounds bored.